This video is brought to you by Card Kingdom. Head on over to cardkingdom.com to get your Magic the Gathering products, including the brand new Zendikar Rising cards today. Hey friends, it's Tomer and welcome to another Commander gameplay video. This week we're getting aggressive with one of my favorite budget brews, Purphoros Bronze Blooded. This is an explosive mono-red Stompy deck. The idea is to get Purphoros onto the battlefield, then use his ability to sneak into play huge bombastic creatures for just 3 mana, flinging them at our opponent's faces for insane value. Our huge chonkers fulfill all the rules we need, smashing for big damage while also acting as removal, generating mana, drawing tons of cards, or just plain old killing our opponents by boosting the damage of our army. We can even get around the drawback of sacrificing creatures snuck in with Purphoros, so the ability is all upside. The combination of being hard to remove thanks to Indestructible and letting us cheat out enormous beat sticks for huge mana discounts makes Purphoros an incredibly powerful commander that your opponents will rightfully fear and respect, even on a budget restriction of just $125 like this deck list. The Purphoros player is often the archenemy for this reason, but win or lose, this deck pulls off some epic turns. Now with the deck intro out of the way, let's hop into the games. Game 1 has us up against 3 returning viewers. Our first opponent is AfroMagic17, who I will call Af, running Uzuri Claw of Progress. Uzuri decks are pretty open-ended, but they usually focus on flooding the board with creatures, loading up on evasive threats with +1/+1 counters, and winning through combat damage. I've seen Uzuri decks focus on token strategies, +1/+1 counters, and infect, so I'm not sure which style of Uzuri to expect. Our second opponent is TLUR, who I will call T, running Muldrotha the Gravetide. Muldrotha is by far the most popular Sultai commander and is a fairly open-ended one, but the one thing that all Muldrotha decks have in common is that they focus on permanence, self-mill, and graveyard recursion. They are usually grindy control decks, but have variety on what types of permanence they like to focus on. Our final opponent is WKK3, who I will call W, running Niambi Esteemed Speaker. Niambi is a sweet legendary tribal commander that supports reanimation thanks to her discard outlet, and also bounce themes with creatures that have powerful enter or leave the battlefield triggers. It's usually a grindy control deck. Of the 3 opponents, I consider Muldrotha enemy number 1 because they have access to Black's powerful creature reanimation. Our deck is full of huge creature bombs that we sacrifice after using, so we're particularly vulnerable to enemies who steal them from our graveyard. Niambi is also scary, as it's the deck that is most likely to have answers for Purphoros itself, which is another one of her weak points. Both players will have to be taken out before they take control of the game. Jumping into the game, I keep a mediocre hand. It's slow, but we're guaranteed to make our first 3 land drops. We've got a bit of ramp with Solemn Simulacrum, and I love seeing Mana Geyser because it always leads to huge explosive turns. It may have been correct to use our free mulligan for something faster, but I think it's fine. T wins the die roll and goes first. Everyone just plays a land for their first turn, and then on turn 2, T plays a forest and enchants it with Fertile Ground, a solid, underrated budget ramp spell. The rest of us play our second lands and pass, then on T's turn they cast Citizen Champion, revealing they're an Enchantress deck. Despite their strong start up until now, they do miss their 3rd land drop, slowing down their momentum. On their end step, W flashes in Niambi. Then on W's turn, they play an island and activate Niambi's ability, discarding Isperia Supreme Judge to draw 2 cards. On our turn, we play Kazul's Cliffs and pass. Definitely a super slow start for us. Af casts Coralhelm Guide, but also can't find a 3rd land. T then finds a 3rd land, playing and cracking Prismatic Vista for a swamp, then casts Dryad of the Elysian Grove, drawing a card off the champion, casts Mystic Remora, drawing another card, then plays a 2nd swamp thanks to the Dryad. While they stumbled for a moment missing a land drop last turn, this turn they more than made up for their lost momentum and are now way ahead on board. W plays a Plains and casts Loyal Retainers, sacrificing them to put Isperia from the graveyard onto the battlefield. I play Darksteel Citadel and cast Solemn Simulacrum, ramping a mountain. Although we're behind, next turn we might be able to start catching up. Unfortunately, Af still can't find a 3rd lane, tapping out and passing. T pays the Remora's upkeep cost, plays a Forest, casts Crewfix's Insight, plays a Breeding Pool untapped, then casts Journey to Eternity, enchanting the champion, drawing another card. W plays a Plains, casts Mana Geode, letting T draw a card off the Remora, then casts Pulse Mage Advocate, and hits T with Asperia. On our turn, I decide to hold on to the Mana Geyser for later and just cast Purphoros Bronze Blooded and play a Mountain. Afro casts Jessian Infiltrator, but still can't find a third land. Feels bad. T lets Mystic Remora get sacrificed, plays a Verdant Catacombs and cracks it for a Forest, casts Defense of the Heart, drawing a card, then casts Copy Enchantment and Estrid's Invocation, copying Defense of the Heart 2 more times and drawing 2 more cards. If any of T's opponents controls 3 creatures on their next upkeep, they can crack those defenses to tutor up 6 creatures onto the battlefield, which will surely be game over. W plays an island and weighs their options with careful consideration and brainstorm, then casts Ghostly Pilferer and activates Pulse Mage Advocate to return a Chroma Angel of Wrath from the graveyard to the battlefield and gives T 3 cards back from their graveyard. Then they hit T with just Asperia and don't attack with the Flying Vigilance Haste 6/6 they just reanimated, which is probably a goof. At this point, T is most definitely winning the game on their turn unless we pull off a miracle. Fortunately, we draw a solid card, Sandstone Oracle. Now we've got a shot at doing something spicy. We kick things off with Mana Geyser to generate a chill 16 mana. I start by sneaking in Hoarding Dragon with Purphoros. Unsure of which artifact to tutor, I settle for Cauldron of Souls, but in hindsight I think Sundial of the Infinite or Meteor Golem would have been better picks here. I then sneak in Primordial, yoinking the Infiltrator, Champion, and Asperia for some big beats. I then sneak in Spawn of Thraxis, killing Ghostly Pilferer, cast Feldon of the Third Path, blow up Mana Geode with Mog's Salvage, and finish by sneaking in Sandstone Oracle. Now empty-handed, I target T with the Oracle's trigger and draw 9 cards. Then we play a Mountain and sneak in Clone Shell. Finally, we swing with the team, killing T and dropping W down to 30. It turns out the best way to deal with a scary player is to just kill them. Who knew? Then we sacrifice our sneaky creatures and discard down to hand size. On turn 6, Av finally finds their third land, playing a Forest and casting Marwyn the Nurturer. W plays and cracks Terramorphic Expanse for an island, casts Thran Temporal Gateway, then activates Pulse Mage Advocate, returning 2 lands and Sandstone Oracle from our graveyard to hand to reanimate Lavinia of the 10th, detaining Feldon. Despite our great last turn, 2 beefy creatures with protection from red are going to be a near impossible roadblock for us to get around. Then we get smacked with Asperia and Chroma. At this point, I'm regretting not tutoring for Meteor Golem with the Hoarding Dragon. Unable to attack W, we hit Af instead, casting Everflowing Chalice, kick twice, Golden Guardian, Wayfarer's Bauble, and play Myriad Landscape. While we're in a rough position, we're setting up for a game-winning next turn. Poor Af continues to watch on the sidelines, casting a Simic Keyrune. W activates Niambi, discarding Rhea Dawnbringer to draw 2 cards, activates the Advocate to return Rhea to the battlefield, and unfortunately has an answer to our plan, casting Urza's Ruinous Blast to exile our Bauble, Chalice, and Guardian. With their value engine fully online at this point, there's nothing left that we can do, and W swiftly takes us out. This was a sweet game, but a bit short, so I've decided to show you a second game as a treat. On to Game 2. Game 2's first opponent is Vanilla Rice, who I will call V, playing Nethroi Apex of Death. Nethroi is a reanimator deck, filling their graveyard with cards that they then mass reanimates, usually ending with a combo win. Our second opponent is returning viewer Knusp, who I will call K, running Derevi Imperial Tactician. Derevi is an incredibly powerful commander that is hard to deal with and can lead high-powered stack decks. However, Derevi is also a popular choice for a more janky bird tribal deck. We've even played against Derevi bird tribal in a previous episode. Our final opponent is Megablin, who I will call M, running Derevi Scrap Savant. Derevi is a mono-red artifact commander. Artifact is one of the most popular and heavily supported archetype in the format, so I expect the deck to be strong, but being restricted to just red cards does lower the power ceiling a bit. Of the 3 decks, I consider Derevi enemy number 1 if they are playing an optimized deck. Derevi is just such an inherently powerful commander that can easily lock us out of the game if built competitively. However, if this is another bird tribal deck, then it's much more manageable. The other big threat at the table is Nethroi, since we're vulnerable to graveyard theft and we don't have a lot of ways to stop their combos. Jumping into the game, we use our free mulligan and keep a decent hand with a bunch of lands including Myriad Landscape and Prismatic Lens. We're set up for a turn 4 Purphoros, though we'll need to find creatures to sneak in. We win the die roll and go first. Everyone spends their first turn playing a land, and on turn 2 I play a mountain and cast Prismatic Lens. V plays a plains and then casts and cracks Traveler's Amulet for a forest. K plays a Thornwood Falls, M casts Wayfarer's Bauble and plays Valakut the Molten Pinnacle. I play a mountain and crack Myriad Landscape for 2 more mountains. V plays a forest and casts Quirion Dryad, which surprises me, but I guess it's a good mutate target. Then they cast Archfiend's Vessel. K plays Prairie Stream and casts Azora's Gateway, a spicy flip card that I haven't seen cast in a very long time, and one that I've never seen flip. M doesn't have a 3rd land to play, but cracks the Bauble to ramp out a mountain. I play a mountain and cast Purphoros. Unfortunately, we don't have anything good to cheat into play yet, but we can keep setting up for an eventual big turn. V plays a swamp, hits me and K, then casts Mesmeric Orb, which will quickly mill tons of cards off everyone's library. This is a scary setup card for Reanimator decks, so after debating for a moment, I decide to nip it in the bud with Mogg Salvage. K plays an island and casts Explosive Vegetation, ramping a forest and plains. Unfortunately, M still can't find another land and plays Mere Sire. Lots of mana screw this episode for some reason. Meanwhile, we're good on mana, but we don't have much to do with it. I cast Mirror March, setting up for future turns. V mutates Majestic Oricorn on the Dryad, revealing that they're a mutate deck, gaining 4 life. They then hit me and K. On K's turn, they loot with the Gateway, then cast Derevi, untapping Prairie Stream, passing suspiciously with 3 mana up. M finds their 4th land, a Strip Mine, then casts Thran Dynamo and Mirror Retriever. They were a bit behind, but now they should have all the mana they need, and we know their last 4 cards are action. Meanwhile, we're still being land flooded, drawing our 4th land in a row. I play a mountain and cast Mimic Vat, waiting to top deck some action. V casts a kicked Skyclave Shade, hitting M with just the Vessel. At end of turn, K activates Crozen Verge, ramping out Scattered Groves and Irrigated Farmland. Then on K's turn, they loot with the Gateway, cast Impaler Shrike, revealing that they're thankfully bird tribal. Then they hit me with Derevi, untapping the Scattered Grove and again suspiciously keeping up 3 mana for some clear instant speed shenanigans. M casts Blinkmoth Urn and taps out. On our turn, we finally draw some action. I decide to cast Rapacious One, which in hindsight is probably a bad idea since K is clearly holding up a 3 mana instant and there's not much upside to risking a counter here. But I got excited to start doing something. Turns out K didn't actually have a counterspell, but rather a Stifle effect, countering Mirror March's trigger with Nimble Obstructionist. Now that the close is clear, however, I decide to pull the trigger and cast Combat Celebrant, hoping to win some coin flips with Mirror March and maybe chain together some extra combat. Heads always wins, but unfortunately it doesn't win this time and we make 0 copies. Oh well. I then attack with both creatures, exerting Combat Celebrant for an extra combat step. Unfortunately though, we didn't get an extra combat step for some reason, which I'm pretty sure is a moto fail. Double ouchies. V attacks us with Auricorn and Shade, and I chump block with 2 Eldrazi spawn tokens. K loots with the Gateway, plays a Plains, then hits V with the Derevi and the Shrike, sacrificing the Shrike to draw 3 cards, and untapping Gateway twice to loot 2 more times. We get to imprint the Shrike onto Mimic Vat, which could be the card draw we need to get back into this game. With 5 cards with different CMCs now exiled with the Gateway, it finally flips into Sanctum of the Sun, an impressive feat. With a full grip of cards and all the mana they'd ever need, they're ready to go off. They start with Supreme Verdict, wiping the board of all creatures. Then they cast Major Tarot, Migratory Route, Derevi untapping the Sanctum, Airborne Aid to draw 6 cards, Warden of Evis Isle, Windbrisk Raptor, and Aven Gagglemaster, going back up to 52 life. Behold the might of Bird Tribal. M cast Kirkish, Unaki Ancient, Wayfarer's Bauble, and strip mines the Sanctum, which is a great call. Then cracks the Bauble and copies it with Kirkish to ramp out 2 mountains. We're drawing more lands, but fortunately we do have the Impaler imprinted on the Mimic Vat, so I make a token copy and hit V to draw 3 cards, finally finding some action. We're still a turn away from doing anything though, so I play Temple of the False God and cast Worn Powerstone, hoping that we survive to our explosive next turn. Thankfully, V saves the day by casting Wrath of God, wiping out the giant bird army. This is great for us. We should now be in the clear to have some fun next turn. I keep the Impaler imprinted on the Vat just in case the Dragon Mage in hand doesn't get to wheel next turn. K may have gotten shut down with their army and Sanctum destroyed, but they're not out yet. They play an island and pass, keeping all their mana up for shenanigans. M drops down a beefy Bosch Iron Golem, getting ready to fling artifacts at people. On our turn, I test the waters by casting Neheb the Eternal, hoping to draw out a counterspell from K. When Neheb resolves, and again Heads doesn't win, which I think is another Moto bug by the way, I follow up by casting Dragon Mage, failing again to make a token copy with Mirror March even though I picked Heads Always Wins, but at least Purphoros turns into a creature. I then swing everything at K and M. K responds by blowing up Neheb with Generous Gift, which I'm totally fine with, I just want the wheel. I imprint Neheb onto the Vat and create a token copy of it. Then Dragon Mage connects, wheeling everyone's hands and drawing us into gas. I then cast a kicked Skyclave Relic and pass. Next turn is sure to be even more fun. V plays a Plains and casts Soul Guide Lantern, which makes our Feldon and Runehorn Hellkite in hand less exciting. It exiles M's Mycosynth Lattice, which is definitely a great idea because that could have been pretty terrible for us. Then they cast Gorging Vulture and Expedition Map, swing in the shade at K. K responds by putting the Derevi into play with their nonsense ability and taps V's Plains, and V responds by tapping their 2 last lands to activate Expedition Map, fetching something. K plays an island and casts Fable of Wolf and Owl, hits us with the Derevi untapping an island, casts Watcher of the Spheres creating a bird token with Fable, and casts Cultivate, ramping a Plains and creating a wolf token. I must say that I like this bird tribal list, despite how much I hate Derevi. M casts Gauntlet of Power, doubling the red mana output of all mountains, including ours. Then they play a mountain, cast Gilded Lotus, and steal Hellkite. Now that Gauntlet is a tremendous gift for our turn. I kick things off by casting Bloodfire Colossus, sticking with Heads since we're not cowards. Yeah, alright, so Here it is, chat. We do Heads Always Wins, and this time it will win. But see? This is what I'm talking about. Heads Always Wins. Finally rewarded, I then cast Feldon of the Third Path and Magus of the Wheel, winning with Heads yet again. All is right with the world. I then try for a cheeky reanimation of Combat Celebrant with Feldon, which is denied by V's Lantern, but that's fine. I cast Runehorn Hellkite, not winning with Heads Always Wins somehow, sneak in Molten Primordial to steal creatures, again Heads not winning despite saying it always wins. And then Terror of Mount Velis to give our army double strike. Again, heads doesn't seem to win. Feels bad. But whatever, we've got lethal, I think. I'm tired at this point and math is for blockers, so I just swing with everything and everyone and hope for the best. Turns out my math was way off, but that's fine too, because we just activate some Bloodfire Colossi to finish off K and win the game. Alright, post-game thoughts. First off, I love this deck, and right after streaming this, I ended up buying a paper version of the deck to add to my collection. I love a big stompy aggro deck that does big dumb things, and Purphoros is definitely that. As for card choices, this is a budget brew, so some cards aren't ideal, but get the job done. The only card that I would definitely get rid of at any budget though is Mirror March. I really wanted to like this card, and it can enable some wild turns, but it doesn't seem worth it for 6 mana. Also, if you're on a tight budget, I don't think Morag is worth the $10 price tag here. Morag is a great card, but this budget deck doesn't have a lot of ways to trigger more than 1 landfall per turn, making Morag a worse and more expensive combat celebrant here, at least when celebrant isn't bugged. And that's it for Budget Purphoros Bronze Blooded. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to hit like and subscribe and hit that dingle dangle for notifications when new videos and streams go up. Speaking of streams, all these games are recordings from my weekly stream here on YouTube Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. So be sure to join me during that time and watch me play, or even play against me. Plus, I'm happy to chat and answer any questions. With all my call to actions done, this video has come to an end, so until next time friends, see ya! Thanks for watching the video. If you liked it, help us out by clicking the like button down below. And to keep up with the latest and greatest, make sure to click the subscribe button. And if you want to watch similar videos, click on the links appearing on screen right now.